Hello and welcome to the Christ Lutheran Church Sermon Podcast. This is Matthew Best. I serve as pastor of Christ Lutheran Church in Allison Hill in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Thanks for being here. If today's message connects with you and what you're going through, brings you inspiration, or offers connection with God, I ask you to please stay on after the message for just a few moments to learn ways to connect with the congregation and the health ministries that we offer. And now, let's dive into God's Word. Our reading today comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 2. On the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to me and to you? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the person in charge of the banquet." So they took it. When the person in charge tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, that person called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana in Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. The Gospel of the Lord. So let's get this straight. We're talking about the Gospel of John, right? We're in a new book. And John's Gospel, if you remember, starts with this kind of abstract, deep thought type of way. In John 1, what it was, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And boy, that really makes it really concrete, doesn't it? And then we hear, as we heard last week, of Jesus' call of his disciples through this urgent action. Come and see. And here we are in John 2, the first public thing of Jesus. And what is it? It's an unnamed wedding, which almost makes this story laughable, really. We're talking about the Gospels, and this is how it's starting? It's kind of weird, isn't it? There's no urgency with this story. There's not starting with any type of power. There's no confrontation, really. There's no grand display of authority. It's a quiet act at a wedding. How unusual that this is what John would want to start with. Turning water into wine, of all things. This is not a grand display. It's an act that pushes attention away from Jesus. Jesus purposely doesn't want to do this, and he doesn't want the attention on himself. It's an act that only impacts a small group of people. An act that most of the guests probably don't even notice what's going on. Because let's be honest, most of them are drunk. They don't care as long as it keeps flowing. This is the antithesis of a power move. And that's exactly the point. John is not showing us what Jesus can do. John is showing us who Jesus is. To understand what's really going on here, we have to remember what else is happening in the world while the wedding is going on. Context matters. Right? Israel is under Roman occupation. People are being taxed into poverty. Violence is always close at hand. The empire demands loyalty, fear, obedience. Life is difficult. Life is crummy. There's rarely times of joy, and then there's this wedding. And if people went to the temple trying to think of, well, that's where I can get some peace, the very place that supposedly embodies God's justice and mercy, that's the temple, it's been compromised, entangled with that empire. The people there have their position because they have loyalty to Rome. And they benefit from that collaboration. The temple is often doing the dirty work to help maintain an oppressive status quo. This is not a peaceful or neutral time in history when this story is going on. And that's what makes this wedding so very important. Because a wedding, especially in this context, is not escapism. It's resistance. Empire wants every gathering to be about it. Its threats, its demands, its urgency, its version of reality. Empire wants your attention all the time, but a wedding refuses that. A wedding says, today isn't about Rome. Today is about two people choosing life together. Today is about a family and a community. Today is about food, lots of it, and laughter and music and dancing and joy. Empires run on fear and anger, conquest, control. A wedding runs on love, relationship, and a stubborn belief in a future and hope. This wedding doesn't overthrow Rome. It does something far more dangerous. It ignores it. And that brings us to John's gospel itself. John tells us this story in a way that feels really kind of frustrating in its slowness. There's no rush in John's gospel. There never is. Just wait till you get to John 6. It just goes on forever and ever and ever. There's no sense of urgency. There's a lot of dialogue. There's delay, there's silence, there's waiting. That alone makes John deeply countercultural. Because we live in a world that's constantly accelerating. Crisis after crisis, outrage after outrage, power flooding the zone so fast that you can't keep up, you can't think, you can't respond. And that's not by accident. That's how domination works. But John refuses to let empire set the tempo. John slows everything down. And here's the striking thing about the story. Empire is going to do what empire does, but it's as if John has forgotten about it entirely. Not because empire isn't real, but not because oppression doesn't matter, but because empire does not get to define what's most important. Instead, John focuses on something that seems insignificant. A wedding. Running out of wine. A quiet, almost invisible act of generosity, and this is Jesus' first sign, we're told. It has no obvious political implications. There's no public recognition. Only the servants knew what happened. There's no immediate impact beyond this small community. It's pretty insignificant. Which should tell us something about how Jesus understands power. Now, this is where people usually start to get uncomfortable with this story, because whenever joy shows up in the Bible, especially embodied joy, someone usually feels the need to explain it away. You just can't have Jesus being happy. Or anyone else for that matter. I can't tell you how many times I have heard people argue in a serious manner that Jesus didn't really make wine here. It must have been grape juice. Welch's. That Jesus wouldn't really do something like that. That Jesus would never participate in getting people drunk. The mental, theological, ideological, semantic gymnastics that are required to make this story say what some people want it to say rather than what it actually says is honestly impressive. And revealing. Because
What's really happening in this story is not about alcohol at all. It doesn't matter. It's about control when that's the response. It's about protecting an already established worldview at all costs. Isn't that what John is confronting? We see the same logic everywhere else. We saw it, or at least I saw it, almost immediately after the ICE shooting in Minneapolis this week. The hoops people jump through to defend what they already believed and the spin the administration puts out on it. Within a couple hours. I see it every time that I have conversations about women in ministry. You have no idea what my female colleagues have to go through. Because people will throw out all sorts of proof texts, dress codes, labels, titles, you name it, that I never have to deal with. Anything to avoid actually engaging in the substance of the topic. Some people just aren't interested in conversation. They're interested in being right and winning. Can't do much with that. And there's always a psychological bottom line that must be protected. That way of thinking is deeply shaped by empire. Because empire teaches us that control matters more than compassion. And correctness matters more than community. And Jesus refuses that framework. Look closely at what Jesus actually responds to in this story. There's no emergency. No one's dying. There's no moral crisis. No one is possessed. There's no theological debate. It's just his mother who says, they have no wine. There's no survival here. The need is joy. The need is for celebration to continue. The need is for life to be shared, not just endured. And Jesus steps in quietly. There's no spectacle. There's no credit. Can you imagine this happening nowadays? Someone would get their phone out and shoot it live with a hashtag that I haven't been creative enough to figure out what that is. Maybe hashtag Jesus partying or something. I don't know. He takes water meant for purification, water tied to religious systems that divide clean and unclean, and he turns it into wine meant for delight. And it's not cheap wine. It's not just barely enough. It's abundant wine. That wine jar had 20 to 30 gallons in it. That's a lot. It's the good stuff, too, we're told. It's not indulgence, it's revelation. It's a foretaste of the feast to come. What matters deeply in John's gospel, it just does, where Jesus will later say that his flesh is real food and his blood is real drink, and where his last meal will carry the weight of everything that comes after. From the very beginning, John is telling us God's future is not scarcity, it's abundance. And that brings us to us. Because if joy and humility and humanity are how Jesus resists empire, then they're how we're called to resist what's killing us now. And this is where it gets harder. Because seeing the humanity of those we love is easy. Everybody does that. Seeing the humanity of ourselves, especially when we're tired or afraid or ashamed, is already harder. But Jesus pushes us further. We're called to see the humanity of those we call our enemies. That sucks. And let me be clear about what that's not, because that phrase can be twisted in all sorts of ways. It's not a call to pretend that everyone agrees. It's not a fantasy where we all just get along. Wouldn't that be nice? It's not about ignoring real differences about morality or power or violence or harm. And it's not a call to put yourself in harm's way with people who have every intent on hurting you or what you represent. Seeing someone's humanity does not mean excusing what they do. It does not mean giving up on truth, and it doesn't mean abandoning accountability. It means refusing to let dehumanization have the final word. And if you want a very human picture of this, just think about this wedding. Do you really think everyone at the wedding agreed with each other and got along? Nope. No human wedding that I've ever been to, right? That's right. Do you think politics never came up at this reception? Do you think religion wasn't argued about? This is a Jewish wedding. They're talking about religion. And they're citing Rabbi so-and-so says this, and Rabbi so-and-so says this. They're fighting about it. Right? Right. Yeah. So do you think family tensions magically disappeared, especially once the wine started flowing? No, of course not. The wedding brings together all types of people. Family members who've known each other their entire lives, who know how to just push that right button to get somebody going. To people who don't know each other. Different beliefs, different loyalties, different wounds. And yet in the middle of that difference, there's this deep loyalty or this deep unity. Everyone is there to celebrate that couple. Everyone is there because life is being celebrated and a future is being claimed. And people want to be a part of that. That's not sameness, that's shared humanity. And that's exactly what Jesus refuses to let empire destroy. Which is why in the very next chapter of John's Gospel, we're going to hear John the Baptist say of Jesus, he's the bridegroom. Interesting little connection. No wonder this gospel begins with a wedding. John is preparing us to see who Jesus really is. The bridegroom who gathers a broken and divided and imperfect people. The bridegroom who invites us not because we agree and not because we're pure and not because we're right, but because we belong. It's not naive unity, it's covenant and joy in its resistance. Jesus is certainly fully divine, but oftentimes I think we forget that he's also fully human. And in this story, we see a very human Jesus. He's at a party, and he wants it to keep going on. And he invites us to do the same, which is why joy and celebration and worship matter so deeply, because worship is resistance. In worship, we hear good news preached to the poor. In worship, we're reminded that we're not alone. In worship, we hear that we are loved by God, that we matter, that there's hope, and that hope has a future. In worship, we learn that peace is not a destination we arrive at, but it's a way of living we practice. That the wholeness, justice, right relationship of shalom is what healthy community looks like. In worship, we tell the truth about what is, both individually and corporately. We confess, and then we hear words we desperately need. You are forgiven. In worship, we share the peace by breaking down barriers so that nothing stands between us and communion with one another. And in communion, we gather as one body, not as a perfect people, not as a people who have it all together, but as a people who come hungry, seeking joy. Worship is a party. There's music, there's joy. I know some places are dull, but that doesn't feel like here. It's a holy party. It's resistance to what the world wants. because it tells a different story. Because we're living under forces that are once again trying to strip people of their humanity through fear, through cruelty, through rigid ideology, through Christian nationalism, fascism, toxic individualism, unchecked greed. The list goes on. And here's the hard truth. We're not going to out-fact check this moment. That road leads nowhere. Jesus doesn't respond to empire by arguing harder or reacting faster. He doesn't take on the methods of empire as his own. He responds by being human and divine, by centering relationships, by feeding people, by celebrating life, by refusing to let joy be stolen. Weddings aren't about being right. They certainly aren't about conquering, and they're not about power. They're about love, community, a future, a new life. They're in the antithesis of all the other stuff that's going on. And that's exactly where Jesus chooses to show up in his first sign, at a wedding in John's gospel. Jesus' first sign is not power over demons like it is in the synoptics. It's the power to keep the party going. And that's not small. In a world obsessed with fear and control and urgency, joy is resistance. Community is resistance. Love is resistance. And Jesus is already here and was already there, quietly making sure there's enough. Thanks be to God.
Thank you again for listening to the Sermon Podcast. I'm always happy to have a conversation or pray with you. Please reach out either by email to pastor@christharrisburg.org or call me at 717-236-8382. I'd also invite you to be part of worship on Sunday mornings at 10:30 a.m. We're a very diverse, open, affirming, and laid-back congregation. Christ Lutheran Church is located at 124 South 13th Street in Harrisburg. Parking is along the street. You can enter the building through the side entrance on South 13th Street or at the corner of 13th and Thompson Streets. And lastly, check us out on the web. Our website is christharrisburg.org. There you can learn more about and offer your support for the congregation as well as the health ministries and free clinics that we provide to people in need in our neighborhood. I invite you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram also at Christ Lutheran Harrisburg. Thank you. I look forward to connecting with you, and I pray that you have a blessed week.